Good morning, everybody. My name is Sean Kirkwood, and you are joining us for another Landlord Tenant University session sponsored by the City of Kansas City, Missouri Neighborhood and Housing Department.
And I'm Loranda Brewer. I'm Sean's counterpart in the work, and we are excited to be here this morning. We've got information-packed session for you today. We've got Ms. Debbie Bayless with the Center of Conflict Resolution online today, as well as Ms. Amy Roberts with the Kansas City, Missouri Health Department. And we're going to be talking about a few things today that are pertinent to not just landlords, but tenants as well. These are bits of information that can help everybody in the tenant-landlord relationship. We're going to start out today with Ms. Debbie Bayless.
Debbie Bayless has been a phenomenal team member on the mediation side of things. And, you know, in this time that we're facing, this unprecedented time, I know our office has been inundated with folks who sometimes just want a conversation with the, tenants wanting a conversation, a civil conversation with the landlords and vice versa. And besides, mediating those conversations, Debbie and her folks over at CCR they can definitely help mediate through the process. So we want to give them the time and the privilege to be able to talk about the services that they offer. And we'll even have her go into a little bit on how they assist with folks who are facing evictions. So just a little bit about Debbie. Debbie has been a mediator with CCR since 2004 and mediation coordinator since August of 2009. Debbie holds a bachelor's degree in sociology and human services with minors in German language and psychology. Currently, she works primarily with neighborhoods in several restorative justice court diversion programs. She completed her master's degree in restorative justice at Eastern Mennonite University in May 2018, which has expanded her skills and understanding as she helps people and families, neighborhoods, and in the workplace work towards peaceful solutions to conflict. Let me say that part again, peaceful solutions to conflict, very important. One of Debbie's goals in the process she facilitates is to help people uphold dignity for themselves and others to transform communication between differing opinions and perspectives. So with that introduction, I now introduce Ms. Debbie Bayless.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I appreciate those kind words. It's an honor to be here, and it has been a pleasure to collaborate with the city on this presentation. Sean Kirkwood and Loranda Brewer have been so helpful. Last month's presentation was impressive, and I look forward to finding ways to use the resources mentioned by Stacy Johnson Cosby and Robert Long. I also appreciate the work the city, housing providers, and KC Tenants have done to improve the relationship and health of those connected with rental units, whether as a tenant or landlord. Like they said, my name is Debbie Bayless, and I'm with the Center for Conflict Resolution. Let me share my screen now and get started on the presentation. So Center for Conflict Resolution, here's our contact information, my email address. My coworker, Karen Slaughter, is the person that is directly connected to the courts and is a major resource as well. We work in 3 major areas of the Kansas City. Like Sean mentioned, I'm the one that works primarily in the community and neighborhoods. And we also have several of our staff that work with education in the schools with teachers and students, as well as staff that work in prisons and those that are coming back into our community. CCR is a nonprofit and has been around since 1999. Our processes are based in restorative justice and which empowers everyone affected by a situation, conflict, or harm to voice their perspectives, be heard, and find mutually beneficial outcomes. We do mediations, facilitate group discussions and learning opportunities, and train people with skills to be self-aware, as well as how to approach people when there is a conflict. We do not approach a situation with an outcome in mind, but prepare, excuse me, people to voice their own concerns and find win-win solutions in collaborative ways. Funding should never be a reason to not to call. We have grants and a sliding scale fee that makes it work for everyone who is willing to face and address the conflict in their lives. Our mission is to help people resolve conflict by providing a safe, structured, and positive environment to talk, tools, and skills that help people to resolve conflict and manage and transform that conflict. We also provide training, and in the training that we provide gives skills and tools to create peaceful solutions and restore relationships. Good communication is difficult and takes some time to process. Always needs to involve truth and directly with the parties that are affected. It is also essential in any relationship, including our topic today, which is the landlord-tenant relationship. We have been a resource for landlord and tenant issues since 2009, when we started receiving referrals from the city and United Way. We average somewhere between 20 to 50 calls a month with requests for some sort of help with landlord-tenant issues. In 2020, we received 175 calls or referrals to help with landlord-tenant issues and cases. United Way, Legal Aid, and City of Kansas City are some of our main referral sources. Most of our calls, though, are specifically initiated by tenants in conflict with their landlord. A lot of the topics that are listed up here are regular maintenance, whose responsibility is maintenance or housekeeping, keeping up things that are around, rental payments, what to do in emergencies, who and when can you enter the property, renter's insurance, whether that's part of it, who pays for what when there's damage, when there's any kind of structural changes that a tenant would like to make or the landlord plans to make. Smoke detectors is an example of what kind of equipment is expected from who to maintain. Extermination, we get a lot of calls about bed bugs, for example, and who can change locks. Those are all things that we get calls about, and we're not there to say this is what the law is. We are not attorneys, but what we do is we provide opportunities for the parties to process, figure out what they are needing, and then bridging the opportunity for a conversation.
Hey, Debbie, can I stop you right there for a second just to clarify? I think it's very important because we do get phone calls and we've made referrals in the past, but just go over that part once again about you all not being attorneys. Like, I mean, for instance, like I know sometimes people will call us and they want us to kind of get into the gray areas of a lease and what's allowed and what shouldn't be allowed. Like a common question or the beginning of a question that we might get is that, is it against the law for, and then they'll go into sometimes a 30, 45-minute spiel on what's the law. And so recently I've inserted that into my language at the very beginning. Is like, we're not attorneys. We don't get into the gray areas. And so I do like that approach that you guys speak in fact and directly, but you guys don't get into that. So is that something similar that you all face at the very beginning of a potential conflict resolution, that people want you all to legalize it?
Definitely, because I think that's how people know how to approach a conflict. Is the only thing that people see is, oh, I need to sue, or I am getting sued, it's going to court. And so that's the only way that we as a community, as a society, decide we need to respond. But our approach is, hey, let's break down what it is that your actual needs are, talk about what it is going on, clarifying things. And then if they do want to proceed and find out what the legal expectations are, we refer them to Legal Aid, Heartland Center for Jobs and Freedom. There's also the Attorney General's office has a great website that gives landlord-tenant rights and responsibilities information. There's a little booklet that we refer people to if they want to specifically work through legal issues. But we believe that if we can break down the specific details and needs that a person has, be able to clearly relay that to the other party, then that bridges that communication, and then the needs can be addressed without having to go through the expense of court. But it is necessary sometimes when you can't reach the other party, when you're still feeling like your needs are not being met. And so, Healthy Homes Initiative is another referral that the city provides, that we refer people to if they have concerns. That we're not the ones that come in and inspect. We get called and asked, hey, will you come inspect this? And like, sorry, we're not the ones that decide whether something's appropriate or not. We're here to help you communicate with your landlord or tenant or whatever to figure out how to move forward and decide together what to do.
Thank you for that clarification. Thank you very much.
Definitely. And so one way we prefer people to be able to figure things out themselves. Like we joke around about that. Ideally, we should be out of a job. If everyone has the skills, then they can communicate with each other. And one way to do that is realize that sometimes you get pretty upset, and taking that time to use this talk process to address a conflict is helpful. And so taking a breath, stopping, taking a moment to be able to calm down and clarify what you're thinking and needing is really good. Once you've settled down and sorted through things, then you approach the person that you're having a conflict with. And let's say in this situation, it's a tenant has a frustration with their landlord. They would approach that person and ask if they have time to talk. If they do have time to talk, then you would ask them to share what's going on from their perspective, and then also ask if you can share yours. Then you each get a chance to share what's happening from your view, voice your concerns. And then once everyone's had that chance to voice their concerns, work on ideas on solving the conflict. And this is not a time to judge the other person's ideas, but to just throw out any kind of ideas. The K for keep it real, that's where you decide whether it's a realistic option, and create a plan that both of you decide, all right, this maintenance is, the sink needs to be repaired, and we can have somebody out. The landlord would say they would be able to have someone out there by this date, and the tenant would say, yes, this works, I will be home at that time. And so creating a plan that works for everyone is what we encourage people to do. So this would be an approach for you to do without using a mediator specifically. But mediation is available if it is something that you need, whether outside or within court. And currently, we are present in court. Since June 2020, we have been a resource for the landlord-tenant court, thanks to the city, and in collaboration with Legal Aid and Heartland Center for Jobs and Freedom. All three of our agencies are available for anyone that is dealing with the situation in court. And we actually have someone who is present at court every Thursday morning. And so evictions is a big thing that's happening to people right now. And that is something that is stressful, and we're in crisis right now. But being able to communicate with each other is what our focus would be. Anyone is available, and we welcome anyone to call us to talk about any kind of eviction situation. We prefer before it gets to the place of being part of court, but we are available in court as well. We have currently, we receive referrals from the landlord-tenant docket, primarily the non-attorney or pro se cases. Also, we try to call the parties before court and try to help them process things that then they would be able to present to the judge on the day of court. My coworker, my awesome coworker, Karen Slaughter, is the one that is present at court, and she facilitates and works with the volunteer mediators that are present. And so she's the person to reach out to if you do have a pending court case, or even if you don't, she's our primary go-to person. So I highly recommend her. But our goal again is to have a mutual agreement where both parties are able to express what's going on, what's happening, and then connect to some other resources. I believe Stacy Crosby Johnson was talking about how they are trying to find funds to be able to cover some of the expenses. And so this is something that we don't provide money for people to pay their landlords, but we provide the plan and ideas on how to move forward.
Ms. Bayless, I have a quick question for you.
Yep.
Obviously, not only what's affecting us here locally, but nationally is the eviction process. We have, due to a pandemic, we have a bunch of folks who, have never needed to seek an outside source, now looking to seek these sources. So just to go back a little bit so we can get some clarification. It obviously say anyone can call you guys during the eviction, or if they're facing eviction. How early in the process is typical? Like, I mean, if you miss a payment or you can't pay, I mean, is that early enough, or should it be where that they get something maybe informally from their housing provider that states that, hey, you maybe you're 90 days behind or whatever the case may be? I mean, how does this work in real time for folks who maybe don't see a path forward?
Right. Well, the earlier the better, because then, the damage, as much damage hasn't been done, or the deep financial hole hasn't been dug yet. So the earlier the better. But we can talk to people at any stage. But like I said, even if a landlord recognizes that somebody's starting to fall behind, we would be available for them to say, hey, will you help me work through an agreement if they're not able to get that communication bridge created? We can do that. But at any stage of that, so the sooner the better, I would definitely say. But a lot of times we get the calls when somebody's already been served. And so they're feeling that pressure from court. And so that's when we can try to create that bridge. When attorneys are involved, it gets a little trickier to have people engaged, and sometimes even an understanding of needing to still pay rent when a case is pending. We get people with confusion about whether do I still need to pay if I have a court case pending. And so again, we don't provide legal advice, but we get people connected and communicating in ways to be able to say, hey, what's the reality here for you, and such. So
well, that's great information, because a reality is probably 75% of the phone calls we get are evictions, and they're already kind of being reactive as opposed to being proactive. So we want to make sure that we route them your way, because folks are seeking help some folks never needed help before. So this is a great resource. So we'll make sure we promote this as much as we can. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Yep. And just to again reiterate, our processes are based in restorative justice, and our goal is to empower and train everyone, so that the bigger triangle, that the community building, 100%, we want everyone to have the skills to be able to communicate and work together before there's a conflict, and so that there's that preventative piece. Then if there is a conflict or issue, or you're in connected to court and all that kind of stuff, that's when we can create a non-punitive conversation where you gather together for a specific situation, rent's not paid, needing to leave, things are in disrepair, all that kind of stuff. And then we also want to work with those that are having to re-enter the community, whether it's school, whether it's prison situation. Those are all the different kinds of resources that we have, because we believe everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, and we work hard to uphold those values in everything that we do. And here is all kinds of different fun ways to stay in contact with us. So any questions or things that you have, any other questions?
Awesome, Debbie. Yes, it looks like we have a few questions, and our question moderator, Mr. Robert Loya, will pull those up for us now.
Okay, cool.
Right, if you're ready, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can hear you, Robert. Go ahead.
Good morning. Okay, first question. Can mediation be made mandatory?
We do have judges refer people to mediation, but mediation as a general concept is voluntary. So both parties need to be willing. And so a judge can say, hey, I refer this to mediation, but again, mediation is voluntary. It's also confidential. So we would only share what the parties mutually agree will come out of the session in whatever written agreement they decide. So we don't disclose anything unless we're mandatory reporters. And so if somebody's threatening or has some kind of that kind of thing, we'd have to maintain that. But mediation as a general concept is never fully forceful. It has to be the parties both mutually decide they will participate.
All right. Next question. If someone is not willing to participate in mediation, what can you do?
Well, we get a lot of those where we can't reach the other party, or the other party, for whatever reason, doesn't want to work with the other person. What we do is we then help them think through how to approach next steps in a way where they're not going to harm the other party, but in ways that they can uphold their own needs and work through it. So we do what we call conflict coaching, where they find ways to narrow down and figure out how to approach and how to move forward. But
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Next question. If one of the parties involved are hostile, can the mediation process still proceed? If so, how do you keep the peace?
Good question. So one of the processes that we always implement, especially if we know that the parties might be hostile or pretty intense, we always do a pre-visit, where we have each person have the opportunity to talk to the mediator. It's a way to de-escalate people's frustrations, be heard, and then recognize how they can then bridge communication with the other party. But if in that process we realize the other party is only going to cause harm to the other, they're not able to have a conversation that they would be able to be productive, then we wouldn't proceed with mediation. And so we have a bit of a filter with our pre-visits to be able to gauge that. But normally we are able to de-escalate parties to have the actual mediation. But that is a definite concern, and we want to make sure people don't get assaulted verbally or physically when we bring them together. So.
Okay. And our last one for now, how long does the mediation process last?
Well, in sitting face-to-face mediation, we schedule usually about 2 hours normally. For the court in person at the landlord-tenant docket specifically, I think those are a lot quicker because there's a time constraint. So I would say it's usually maybe 15, 20, 30 minutes. That's why we try to reach the parties ahead of time so that we can have a little bit more time to process, and the judges will give us continuances if there's not enough time to be able to give them the chance to have a full mediation. But sometimes the ones at court are a lot smaller. But the process from the time that people call and we do a longer intake, I would say each party gets about a good hour of time with each, the mediators, and then the actual mediation process. So it's 4 to 5 hours total, can last, depending on people's schedule, the whole time frame can be from a week to a month, depending on people's schedules as far as being able to meet and talk. So.
And that was the last question for now.
All right. Thank you, Robert. And thank you, Debbie. Debbie, that was a wealth of information that people could most certainly use, especially in a time of conflict. Again, her information is posted here on the screen. Please make sure that you are taking advantage of these services. That's what Debbie and her team are here for. If you're having issues with someone, and there's someone available to help you work those out, by all means, use those services. And these ladies are so kind and gentle, and they are more than willing and happy to help.
Definitely.
So thank you, Debbie, for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
We're going to move to the second portion of our presentation, and Miss Amy Roberts with the Health Department is going to come and talk to us about the KC Lead-Free program.
And before Amy, before you begin, I'd just like to let everybody know about Ms. Roberts is that if you've ever had the chance to hear her present, she is very thorough. I'll be honest, I used to be a code enforcement officer for 5 years, and I did not know as much about lead and lead-free until I attended Amy Roberts' presentation. She's very thorough. She's an asset, and which is great that she can be here with us today. So today we're going to talk, she's going to talk about a few things, but just like Ms. Bayless, she's an asset to the community. You're never bothering her. Her team is great, and they provide excellent information. So without further ado, Ms. Roberts.
Thanks so much, Sean and LaRonda. I'm so glad to be here today. Please feel free to pop in with questions. I'll run through a few slides, and sometimes there's questions that come with each slide, so don't hesitate to just jump right in, okay? My name is Amy Roberts. I'm the program manager for the Lead Poisoning Prevention Program here at the Health Department. And I've been with the program for over 20 years. And the Childhood Lead Poisoning Prevention Program incorporates a number of other programs. And one of them is our Lead Safe KC program, which is our home repair program for lead paint hazards. So I'll talk a little bit about lead poisoning, and then I'll talk about our program. Okay, can I have the next slide? Thanks. Thanks. Lead poisoning is a serious illness that can affect children and adults. We see it more often in children because they have hand-to-mouth activity. They're always putting things in their mouth and using their mouth to explore. But adults can get lead poisoned by putting things in their mouth as well, or by their job. Lead poisoning is usually caused by deteriorating paint in homes that are built before 1978, although people can get exposed to lead, as I said, through their job or through their hobbies or different habits. Next slide, thanks. So we see here this little one, whoops, we're going to go back to the baby picture. That's a typical way that kids get exposed to lead. We see lead a lot in windows. I think we skipped over a couple. Okay, we can just pick up right at that one. That's okay. Yes. So if you go back to slide 3. We find lead paint in windows and on porches and on eaves and in the soil around houses most frequently. Back in the day, they used to use lead paint on areas that were the hardest to reach because lead paint lasted longer than other types of paint. So when kids start walking around, they go peeking out with the windows or playing with toys in the windows, and then they'll put their mouth on the windows or their hands, and then they'll put their hands in their mouth. So next slide, thanks. And this is some typical examples of what we see. You can see that when lead paint cracks, it's really thick and it cracks in straight lines and squares. So you can see that exterior window, which is got some paint breakdown. And then I believe that's a porch column where you can see that square typical chipping with striations. Next slide. Lead poisoning can cause a lot of different problems. It affects all systems in the person's body, but we can see brain damage and learning disabilities, ADD, ADHD in young children. We can also see high blood pressure, which sometimes doesn't show until the person is an adult. We see, again, hyperactivity, hearing and vision problems, learning and behavioral issues, and if the lead poisoning is severe enough, it can cause seizures and death. In Kansas City, at any given time, there are around 300 children. So those are children that are between 6 months and 6 years of age. We do see lead poisoning in older kids, but there's usually around 300 kids that are currently diagnosed with lead poisoning. And around 1,200 children here in Kansas City have undiagnosed lead poisoning. And what that means is they haven't been tested, or that they haven't been tested regularly enough to catch that lead exposure. 79% of Kansas City housing is at risk for having lead paint hazards, and that's 160,000 homes. People don't realize, people think, oh, they haven't used lead paint since 1968. Why would it still be on houses? But what happens is, the house is still there, and we have a lot of older housing here in Kansas City. And so those lead paint hazards and that lead paint that was still on the house is still there, because most of the time people paint over the multiple coats of paint. And that's fine, but underneath on those deep layers, a lot of times you'll see lead paint and lead paint hazards. The Lead Safe KC program, which is our paint removal program, has removed lead paint hazards in over 2,500 homes since 1997. Next slide. So here's an example of some of the houses that we see that can have lead paint. And this house has got some deterioration issues, a number of different types of issues, but they have some, maybe some chipping paint on the windows, maybe on the shutters, on the door frames, and perhaps some old chips that have gone into the soil around the house. And you can see that bare soil, which can be a hazard to kids. So some of the services that we provide at the Lead Poisoning Prevention Program include case management for lead poisoned kids, and this includes a visit from a nurse and a home inspection from a licensed lead risk assessor. We do provide free blood testing to anyone of any age, adults and children, and that's by appointment. We do free blood lead testing at schools and daycares. So we will go out, we usually go out to all of the Head Starts in the Kansas City area, and we'll also go to smaller daycares, private daycares, home daycares, and we can do testing of multiple kids. And again, free removal of lead paint hazards from residential properties. We serve single family homes and multi-unit properties as well. We also provide educational information for healthcare providers, high-risk workers and families, all different professionals and people who have an interest in environmental issues as well.
Hey, Amy, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Going back to the slide where the child, had their mouth on the window pane.
Yes.
Is lead, is it something you take in, physically that way, or is it something that's more airborne as well?
Primarily, it is something that's ingested, so that means it's swallowed. And what happens is that with those lead paint chips, you can see those, and occasionally children will have those in their mouth. But what the thing about lead is that it deteriorates and breaks down into dust, and it'll contaminate other dust that's in the house. And then children either
Wow.
put their hands down on their toys, or they put their hands on their floor to pick up their Cheerios, or pick up a bottle off the floor, and then they'll put their hands in their mouth and they absorb it in their stomach.
Wow. Wow. Very dangerous. Very dangerous.
Yes.
Thank you. Let's see here. Next slide.
So some of the additional resources that we provide include cleaning kits, and we provide cleaning kits for families who have lead poisoned children. or families with children under 6 who are doing renovation in their home and they live in a high-risk zip code, or they live in an older house. We do have some home lead test kits. Sometimes people are reluctant to have our inspectors come out, or they're worried about paying somebody for an inspection. And so we can provide them with a lead test kit so they can check the paint in their home themselves. Usually that is kind of a baby wipe, and you wipe the baby wipe on a windowsill or a door frame, and then it comes with a self-addressed mailer, and it goes straight to the lab. We do provide some stainless steel cooking pots. Occasionally, we will see families that use traditional pottery or imported cookware, and there are some lead solder places on the cookware, or sometimes if they use pottery or cooking pots that come from Mexico, there can be lead in the clear glaze that's on those containers, and so that lead can get into the food. So we provide cook pots and we'll swap out contaminated pottery. We do have HEPA vacuums, which is the high efficiency particulate vacuums. And those are for families who are doing renovation on their house, or they have a lead poisoned child and they have other young children in the house, and they need some help getting rid of some of those lead paint hazards. We do recommend families wet mop and then vacuum frequently. We have a speakers bureau for community groups, neighborhood groups, and professionals. And we do telephone consultations for lead paint issues, pest issues, including rats, and other healthy homes issues. So the healthy homes portion of the lead poisoning prevention program is education. We do some healthy homes home repair for free for people who sign up with our Lead Safe KC program. But we're a separate program from the rental inspection program. So our healthy homes work is primarily education. So the Lead Safe KC program is our home repair program, and it's a housing and urban development, so HUD funded program, and it provides lead paint hazard repair. So we have inspectors that come to the person's house after they apply, and they will look for chipping paint or lead paint hazards. 75% of the cost of the repair is free for rental property owners. So we serve rental property owners, and we also serve owner occupied properties. So we do take Section 8 vouchers, but if it's a Section 8 is with the property, we don't take those applicants. But if it's a voucher, then we'll serve those rental properties. And then rental property owners need to agree to market their property to low-income families with children for at least 2 years after completion of the repair work. So the next slide, what does a repair work include? People always ask that. So it does depend on what the inspection shows. So like I said, the inspector comes out to the house and they look for the hazards, and this money is for hazards and making the property safe for families. In addition, that can also provide some more energy efficiency, and it can make properties look better. But the main point is that it makes the home safer for little ones. So we frequently do a lot of painting, interior and exterior. We will sometimes do landscaping if there's lead in the soil. We occasionally will do vinyl siding repair or vinyl siding, depending on if there's on what the condition of the paint and how many types of hazards there are on the exterior. And we do a lot of window replacement, again, because we see chipping lead paint in windows very frequently. And again, single family homes and multifamily units are eligible. We have our applications available for rental properties and owner occupied on the city website. So people can go online and they can fill the application out online, or they can print it and fill it out. They can call us at, I don't have my number on here. Oh yeah, it is on here. So 513-6048. And they can request an application and we'll mail it. We do help people fill out their applications if they need assistance with that. And they can also go on, again, the city website, kcmo.gov. They can go ask for an application by email, and we can send them the link to the application. And they can submit the application by email, online, or they can mail it in, or they can walk it in, or they can fax it in.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. I have a quick question, and then we'll get to some of our online questions. But a question that I'm not saying I know I've gotten this at some point in time during my tenure with the city, but obviously this is a win-win for both tenants, the occupants of those properties, the housing providers. I mean, it's a win-win all around. We have healthy children, we have healthy adults. It's a win-win. But the part that I've gotten at some point in time is that I could understand maybe the reservations that a housing provider might have to get involved in this process. I mean, once you start testing the soil and you start doing all of these initial things. So I guess my question is, how do you encourage the housing providers, the housing owners to get involved in this particular process? Because, and I say that to say that as we hear both sides of the eviction argument. One way, we have some folks who feel one way about the eviction process. Housing providers may feel a different way. And I think that we can all agree that nobody wants sick children. And so, but I can also understand that there is a misconception that all housing providers are wealthy and they can provide all the necessary repairs, and when that's just not the case. So how do you encourage housing providers to get involved in this process, to go about, letting you guys maybe do some of the testing that needs to be done, but also ensuring that, taking the scaredness out of, having their property inspected in the first place? I can see some reservations with that.
Yeah, and I think that's a great question. Some property owners are just can be nervous about having someone from the government, even though we're local government. I can see how people would be nervous. And sometimes people don't believe that it's actually free money. You know what I mean? We have lead poisoning issues here in Kansas City, and it's significant enough that we want to protect the children, and we want to provide for property owners, both the rental and owner occupied properties. And again, this is an opportunity for people to apply to potentially get free window repair. It is a voluntary program, so at any time, if one of the applicants is nervous, or a rental property owner is nervous about the situation and doesn't want to continue, they can change their mind at any time. We can identify the hazards for them, and then they can always fix them themselves. And a lot of times families know, or owners know, if their house is old enough to have lead paint. When houses are rented and sold, if it's built before 1978, they're required to disclose that there's lead paint anyway. And if we identify lead hazards in a rental property, then that owner has documentation that they've done something to fix that and to help keep those families healthy. The other thing is that if they have a child who gets lead poisoned, this is a great way to prevent that. So you're making that house more safe for your tenants. You're addressing the problem beforehand, So in addition to the improvements that we can make on your property, you're helping the health of people that either are living in the property at the time, but also people who will come live in the property in the future. And one of the things we look at, is how long do those repairs keep the property safe? And, when you do window replacement, again, that those windows have been taken out and that lead paint has been totally removed. So that's a huge improvement to the property. We do work with landlords. Sometimes property owners, they'll apply and they'll say, well, I might not have the 25%. And that's okay. We can always just hang on to their application. And then when they're ready to move forward, we can move forward. There is an application, we do have to have people's information and information about the tenants. And we do require to meet with the property owner and for them to allow our inspectors to come into the property. We do allow the owners to have some input into what kind of colors the contractors use, and we use licensed contractors that are licensed with the state, and they have to be approved by the city and in our pool. So there's a lot of things that we do to try and make it a more comfortable experience.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you, Amy. So we'll go to Robert to see if we have any questions for Amy. Robert?
Yes. Can you hear me, everyone?
Yes.
All right. We have 8 questions right now. The first question is, what are the signs of lead poisoning?
That's a great question. The thing about lead poisoning is it mimics a lot of other illnesses. So when kids are lead poisoned, or adults, they may have some stomach upset. They may have some nausea, some vomiting. They may have some hearing problems. They may have pain in their wrists and ankles. Sometimes we look at children who have started to walk and then they will decrease their walking, or they've started to speak and they'll have some speech problems. So usually we recommend that people get tested just to be sure, because the symptoms of lead poisoning are pretty vague. The best way to tell if a person is lead poisoned is with a blood lead test, which they can get from their doctor, or they can call for an appointment and get one from the health department.
All right. Next question. What do you do if you suspect your child has been exposed to lead poisoning?
If a person thinks their child has been exposed, the best thing to do is to make an appointment for a blood lead test, and then we can know for sure. While the person's waiting for their appointment, they can always call our lead poisoning prevention program at 816-513-6048, and they can speak with one of the nurses who can give them some information while they're waiting to help protect their kids, and to make sure that that it might be lead poisoning or something else. But the best way to tell for sure is with a blood lead test.
All right. Next question. What is the recovery time from lead poisoning?
The lead poisoning or exposure to lead is half of the recovery time is usually about 30 days. So when a person gets lead in their body, we expect for half of that amount to be gone within 30 days. If they get no more lead in their body, it would be another 30 days, as long as they aren't getting any more in. So sometimes we'll get a question where somebody will say, oh my gosh, I used to eat paint chips when I was little. We better do a lead test on me, even though I'm 40. And we'll say, well, we could do a test, but it probably wouldn't show the lead paint that you had back when you were a child. So when someone gets lead paint in their body, some of it stays in their soft tissues, their organs. Some of it goes in their bones, but it only lasts in their blood, where we can test it, for about 30 days to 60 days.
All right. Next question. Can tenants request these services if they suspect they have lead paint?
They can ask us to come do a courtesy visit. So we can have an inspector come and look and see if the paint in their house has a characteristic look. We don't use our testing machines without having a lead poisoned child in the house, but we can always come look and say, make recommendations to help make the house safer if the person doesn't want to involve their landlord. We do say that with our applicants, especially single family homes, if the tenant wants to fill out the application, as long as they have the owner sign it, then we can accept it.
Okay, next question. Is there an income cap on requesting a lead inspection?
We can do a visual inspection for any income, to be able to apply to the Lead Safe KC program, the income guideline is 80% or less. So that's 80% of the median income. Usually we'll say if people qualify for WIC, then they would qualify for this program. And again, for rental property owners, the income guideline applies to the tenant, not the owner.
Next question. Are there any additional costs with removing lead that aren't covered by the program?
That's a really good question too. Not really. The only thing would be continued maintenance, which the property owner would need to do anyway. So, you know, when you paint something, we use 30-year paint, but if we paint a porch, for example, but the person would still need to maintain that paint regardless of whether or not we did any painting.
Can Amy leave her email address? Thank you for both of these wonderful presentations.
Sure. Can I just tell you what it is?
Mhm.
You ready?
Good. Sure, go ahead.
So it's Amy, AMY.Roberts, ROBERTS @kcmo.org. So that's my direct email.
Okay. Next question. If lead is found, do they guarantee full removal? Is it completely free?
The property is not lead free, but we say that the lead hazards are removed. So HUD requires us to remove all of the lead paint hazards. And a lot of times, sometimes that involves taking out the entire component, like taking out a window and putting in a new one, or it involves painting. So we know if we paint it, there still could be lead paint underneath on the lower level. So it's a combination of permanent repair and temporary repair that'll need to be maintained.
All right, and a follow-up. Is lead similar to asbestos? I've heard that some asbestos insulation contains lead particles.
Lead is not the same as asbestos other than that they are both found in the ground and used a lot in industry. So they're both minerals kind of that are found in the ground, and the similarity comes with sometimes cleaning. You know, they're both environmental hazards. They can both be cleaned, and you have to take precautions with both. But most of the time we don't see lead mixed with asbestos.
Okay, you had a thank you response for your email. And for now, the last question is, how are owners responsible if they sell? They will have to disclose, right? They're asking if they have to disclose.
Yes, that is correct. So a property owner has to disclose based on the federal law if the property is built before 1978. They are correct if lead paint hazards are identified. We provide them with a copy of the inspection report and then all of the work that's been done and when the work's been done. So they can keep that with their records and then let any buyer or tenant know that the work has been done. They don't have to disclose the work, I don't think, for tenants. They just have to comply with the federal disclosure. If the property, the regular federal disclosure that goes along with the property's age for renting the property. But if they sell it, we always recommend including the work that's been done and then the hazards that were identified.
And that is the last question for now.
Thank you.
All right, great, Amy, thank you. Thank you everyone for all of your questions. Amy, great presentation, a wealth of information yet again on a very, very critical subject that I don't think a lot of people think about when you go to purchase a home, if it has lead paint or not. And if it does, how is that a danger to your family? So thank you for filling us in on that. And if anyone that's attending, if you have any show ideas or if you have some subjects that you would like to see addressed, please, by all means, let us know. We are here to help you. So if there's some things out there that you feel like, well, as a tenant, I would really like to know more about this, or I think I need some more information about this as a housing provider, then please, by all means, make sure that you contact us. And if you give me just a moment, I'll have our contact information up. And this is how you can reach us. Sean?
Yeah, let's see here. You can reach us at, we have a couple of emails here that we utilize, and we check these both daily, several times throughout the day. One is landlord.university@kcmo.org. And the other one is tenant.university@kcmo.org. My personal phone number, which obviously I'm there unless I'm helping somebody. My phone number is 816-513-9054.
And my phone number is 816-513-9024.
Yes. So once again, we thank you all for clocking in here to Tenant Landlord University. We're here to empower you. We're here to connect you with our community partners. We thank you once again, Ms. Bayless, for all that you and your staff do. Send our best to Ms. Slaughter, who's been a great community advocate for decades. So great addition to the team. And we look forward to seeing her next time that we have you guys on. And Ms. Roberts, once again, very thorough. You know your work, and your work is very, very important, especially in this day and age. So we thank you all once again. And you can look forward to us every month. We're trying to give you all something new, something fresh, and we're trying to put the transparency in government. So you'll be able to see our faces, you'll be able to see our community partners' faces, and we want to give you real and relevant information. So once again, thank you very much.
Absolutely. And if you're curious on when our next session will be, make sure that you log on to kcmo.gov and check the city calendar where it will be posted. If you are also curious and need the link for the class, you can always send us an email. We would like to thank our various community partners. Mr. Robert Loya, thank you for moderating our question and answer section of the show. We would like to say adieu. Everyone have a great afternoon, and we'll see you on the next session.
Thanks so much.